Buddy Hield showed why he will be the National Player of the Year for many publications across the country. 37 points. He has the second most points in NCAA tournament history through 4 games. Only Steph Curry has more. It's the first time Oklahoma has been to the Final Four since 2002. Hield, for the last couple of games, has been able to take over in ways that we want to see on the next level. His game is very diverse. I thought it was kind of cool how he kind of shouted out Kobe. He said, blame it on Kobe. He saw Kobe in the stands. He was like, oh man, I got to show out. And unfortunately, Oregon should have made sure Kobe did not get in the building because Hield just completely took over that game.
That game was just a reminder that, hey, NBA, Paul George is back. We forget that Paul George, we were talking about Paul George the way we talk about Kawhi Leonard prior to his injury. I truly believe that Paul George will be where Kawhi Leonard is right now if he wasn't hurt. He's a great two-way player, great two-way defender. Offensively, I think he's better than Kawhi is. He can give you buckets on buckets on buckets. He drops 30 like it's a bad habit, you know? So I think that's one thing that we have to see coming into this series, that Paul George, will we see Paul George truly return to form? This season, he's been amazing. I would give him a most improved player, or if the NBA had a comeback player of the year award, he would have it. His name would already have been sealed on it midway through the season.
Guys, what will you remember most about Kobe Bryant?
I think for me, it's definitely his impact and overall legacy for the game. His mental aspect and his attitude is one thing that everyone constantly reveres around the league. I think it's best summed up when you look at young guys like Paul George, and you look at guys like DeMar DeRozan. They said when he announced it that Kobe was everything to them. He was an idol to them. Paul George said in his own words, he was my Michael Jordan. And I think when you look at his mentality and his drive to win, is matched only by probably one person in the history of this league. North Carolina controls the board, 32-15 deficit for on the boards for Notre Dame. They had more offensive rebounds than Notre Dame had defensive rebounds. You know, that's unheard of for like an Elite Eight matchup for any kind. Their presence down low is great. The leadership in Marcus Page, who, like, when you think about it, Marcus Page signed out to North Carolina when they were the number 1 team in the country, and no one would have thought in his career, he thought he would be at Final Fours every year, you know? And this is the first one. You definitely see that his leadership was going to really, I think his veteran leadership was really going to prove worthy in the Final Four.
I think it all will depend on Bogut's health to me. I think when it comes down to the end of it, in the West, you're going to have a lot more big men that are going to press the issue. When they play against the San Antonio Spurs, possibly in the Western Conference Finals, who's going to be there to stop LaMarcus Aldridge and Tim Duncan? Draymond Green can't do both. So far this season, he hasn't been able to do either.
We don't get to see performances like this. As you heard the stat, only the third player to do it since 1984. The other 2 players being Chris Webber and Shaq. You know, when we see Goliath-like performances like this, it kind of shows you what the NBA used to be. It used to be centered around the big man. The big man used to be a really crucial focal point of offense. And Anthony Davis is really, is a coming of age for Davis. Even though this season has been, underwhelming for the New Orleans Pelicans, but it's nice to see a little bright spot coming from Davis.
And we have to kind of assume, did DeMar DeRozan and Kyle Lowry overachieve during the regular season, that when they get to these playoffs, they just don't have that other guy to help them out in these big games?
I don't think it's a matter of fact of overachieving. I think it's the fact that I think we're putting a little bit too much into this game one. The internet legit just slaughtered the Raptors after this loss because it's very disappointing. But I think that their backcourt, arguably top 5 in the league, they can muster enough offense to compete with pretty much anybody. We saw it. We saw it over and over again, over 82 games. I'm not a true believer. I do believe there are certain teams, like we saw with the Hawks last year, that they're truly regular season teams. And we know when they get to the big boys, they're not going to cut it. But in this case, I think the Raptors have the tools to make that jump. They just couldn't establish a flow in their offense this past weekend. But hopefully we'll see that change.
But people have to also factor the conference he's coming from. Coming from the Pac-12, and Stanford was just in the Sweet 16 2 years ago. Like, this is a lot higher. Like, UCF has not been to the NCAA tournament in over 10 years. Since 2005, 2004, back when we were playing, Atlantic Sun? Atlantic Sun Conference, stuff like that. So I feel like I think it's the right move. It's not as fancy and not as a big splash, I think, as people were expecting. But, once again, this is a guy with a Duke pedigree that you cannot stand aside. A great college basketball player in his own right. So,
Josh, do you think, first, it was fair to give him all the criticism that he received, and then secondly, how much do you think this impacts him moving forward?
I think whether we're deciding whether it's fair or not, maybe not. I think D'Angelo Russell just did this in the wrong era. Yeah. If he did this in 2001, and there's no really social media for the backlash or the backlash to be so visible. I think his decision ultimately to record Nick Young, even though he said that's the thing that him and Nick does, they play jokes and prank stuff like that, is that there's a certain point where you got to realize that that's not okay.
Yeah.
And I don't believe he leaked the tapes to TMZ, but like the real question is like who did?